I guess I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be.
All right, this is Kat Sturtz from rockingyourpath.com. And this is a brand new season of Fast Action Fridays. And I love the platform for this. We get to see the guests, even though my favorite chef is just in a room down the hall from me. We are starting this one out by talking about sell by dates, best if used by dates, freshness dates, how long you can keep those dried herbs in the cupboard that are gathering dust, and all the things. And why am I doing that on a show, as Action Fridays, and myself, who is a business life coach? Why am I talking about food? Well, the main reason is I deal with a lot of people who are struggling with limited time, money, and resources. And anything you can do within your personal life, as well as your business life, to save money, time, and resources, frees up time, money, and resources to be used on things that are more important and can help you grow that bottom line. So we have with me today my co-host, uh, Dennis D. Sturtz. He's been a professional trained chef for how many years now? About over 30.
Oh, yes, over 30 years.
He's was one of the new instructors when the Culinary Institute of Michigan started in Port Huron, Michigan, and hopefully we'll be going back to that post after some surgery. We'd like to thank the people on the phone that are just listening and lurking, and our several people who are live with us. We will be opening the seats. And Dennis, why don't you give us a brief background about you and why checking the sell by dates can be so mysterious?
Okay, thanks, Kat. As Kat has told you, my name is Chef Dennis. Um, I've been a chef, as she said, for over 30 years. Um, I used to be a factory worker at one point in time, but I started cooking at a very young age with grandmas and mom. Um, I'm of a Polish descent, so we did all ethnic type cooking. And I learned at a very early age. I was cooking since I was probably 4 years old. Uh, so after the factory work, I just couldn't take too much more of it, and I wanted to follow the love of my life. I went to follow my fast action, and went into cooking, and got a degree from um, Macomb Community College, and became a certified chef, and have been chefing in several places. I've owned my own restaurant, um, and that's a pretty brief summary of me, and that's probably enough of me at this point in time. Um, Sell by dates, they're made for manufacturers and retailers. Um, a sell by date means that's the quality of the food is the best. After that date, it starts to go downhill as far as the manufacturer is concerned. Um, is the product something you need to throw away at that point in time? Absolutely not. Yes, you have to watch some items. Um, a lot of times now in stores, I noticed um, they will have, let's say, meat, for instance, you go to the meat counter, and it'll say, use immediately or freeze. And what that means is just that the quality is at its peak. You can use it today, maybe tomorrow at best. But if not, you definitely want to freeze it or you will lose the product, and definitely the quality will go downhill. Um, Shopping for the reduced shelves or racks, as they are in some of the stores up here. That's a great money saver. Um, there may be a little bit of a crushed carton, or again, mainly it's out of date things. And canned items, for instance, it says used by January 1st, 2016. That product is probably good yet until January 1st, 2017, as long as it's not dented or bloated. Then, of course, you don't want to use it at all. You want to immediately get rid of it. But those are some of the things that people need to look at. And there was a study done, and I don't remember the authors. I want to say Harvard University was part of it. But the average family of four throws away approximately $4,000 to $6,000 worth of food every year. A lot of it is on expiration dates.
Wow, that is a load of money that I'd much rather use for other sources. Well, Chef, if you've got a lot of tabs open on your computer, you might want to shut those down because you're only getting your audio. That's coming through fine. I do have a couple questions for you, and we want to make sure we get a couple of fast action tips in our first 15 minutes, and then we can go on to our, there we go, go on to our bonus Q&A session. I know that when we cleared out your mom and dad's house several years ago, we brought home with us a whole big box of dried herbs and spices. Now, are those still good, or are we holding on to those for just sentimental reasons?
Well, I'm sure a lot of them are sentimental reasons. Dry herbs will last. Again, those have expiration dates, but they're good for a year, sometimes maybe even up to 2 years, depending on what you're using it for. You can use an old dried herb like for soups or sauces or whatever. They're not good like fresh for a fresh salad or something. But herbs, I think, are the best dried. You really don't want to go too much over a year. 6 months is a good guideline. So yeah, some of those herbs that we brought back from Mom's probably should be pitched, because they're just, the taste just isn't there.
I know we used a bunch of them when we were making homemade stock a couple of months ago. And one fast action tip for people that I learned from you is that when you use a dried herb, to rub it between your hands or to crush it a bit before you add it to the food you're putting it to. And that helps release the essential oils that are there. And thus you're releasing the flavors and the aromas that come with it. Is that right? Did I remember right?
No, you remembered absolutely correct. You can either, like I said, put them in the palm of your hand and then just do that, rub them back and forth. And again, you're heating it up to get the oils out of it. The same thing would be hold true. Let's say you were making spaghetti, for instance, and you're making a sauce. You could add your basil and your thyme or whatever your herbs are right to your pan. You can rub them first, but the heat from, let's say you've got ground meat in there, the heat will, again, bring out the best flavors in those herbs. They've found that out for years. Also, the difference between, if I can real quick, difference between dry herbs and fresh herbs. People would think fresh herbs you don't need as much as you would with a dry product, and that's just the opposite. You would use more fresh herbs than you would dry herbs, because when it's dry, it becomes concentrated. So therefore, if a recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh basil, then that's what they want. But if you were going to use the dry basil, you could probably get away with using maybe 1 tablespoon of dried basil as opposed to the 2 tablespoons of fresh basil.
All right. Well, Cindy's got a question in the chat bar, and it says, I've heard when I've sold Tupperware that after 6 months to a year, herbs and spices start to lose their flavor, so you may just need more. However, Tupperware or stored in glass, they could last a year before losing their flavor, and they might need more. Is that true? And that's going to lead. I'm going to let you do a longer, more involved answer to that. But the fast action tip on that is use your common sense. If you open that jar and you can still smell the aroma of that herb, I mean, sage has a particular aroma, marjoram, oregano, parsley, thyme, tarragon are the ones we use most often. If you open it up and it's got a aroma that you recognize, I'd say that it's probably still good to use, especially if you don't have the alternative. What do you say to that, Chef?
That's true to a point, Kat. A lot of times with dry herbs, the older they get, they lose that aroma that you're speaking of. But that's a good tip. But let's say this herb has been, and Tupperware is a good example, because Tupperware does some nice airtight things. I happen to use vacuum sealing, but even in glass, you can tell again by putting them in your palm of your hand and rubbing them. There you will get some aroma and some of the taste back. And then again, if at that point in time if it doesn't taste like basil at that point in time, then it's probably not worth using. But yes, they can hold their flavors for a long period of time.
All right. Now, when we go shopping, what are some quick tips besides using your common sense when you're looking for foods and you're noticing or checking the sell-by dates? Any quick tips on that? For instance, bread or milk or?
Well, just know, products in a store should all have the up-to-date sell-by dates. In other words, you shouldn't be buying a product today in the store that was expired on December 31st, for instance, unless it's in a reduced rack, because they normally pull that again for quality reasons. But things to look at, milk, for instance, I always check, and some people think I'm probably nuts, but I'll go into that milk refrigerator, and I'll look for several different kinds of cartons. Check the shelves, because sometimes in the back, or maybe on the bottom, or maybe on the top, depending on their system of rotation, you may find a milk product that has 3 or 4 more days or another week left to before it expires. And that's the product you'd want to buy at that point in time, then, because you're getting another week out of that before you've ever left the store.
And what about when you bring it home? Do we have to throw it out when it hits that date?
Absolutely not. And again, there's a lot of your common sense factor, and I will use milk is a good one. Eggs is another one. Eggs, you can use eggs up to probably 6-8 months after, quote unquote, the sell-by date. A lot of times eggs are kept in large coolers where they're, was to say manufactured, but I guess Eggs aren't quite manufactured. They got some help by a chicken, but they they will sit in coolers up to 6 to 8 months before they ever get on the shelf in the supermarket. Uh, Milk, I like to use milk. Um, let's say I have a carton of milk in my refrigerator right now, and it says used by January 1st. Um, Check it. A lot of people will open up the cap if they have a gallon jug or whatever, or any plastic container. Open it up and they'll smell it. And sometimes it'll smell sour to them. Do not, I repeat, do not use that as a factor. Because what happens is when you've been pouring that milk, some of the residual milk stays on top, near the top of the lip of the carton. And that may turn sour, uh, whereas the milk itself is not sour. So, I know it sounds stupid, but pour a little bit out, just so you can put your finger in it and taste it. You'll know whether or not it's sour or not. And another way to work with milk too, is if it's starting to go and you know that, you can freeze that product and it can become a buttermilk product. You can freeze it and use it in pancakes or maybe a soup or something.
Yep, absolutely. Another quick tip I remembered from my farm days is we always cracked an egg one at a time in a separate little bowl before we added it to whatever recipe we were making. That way, if you had one that was bad, or maybe you didn't get it out of the chicken coop, didn't see it early enough, um, you weren't going to ruin a whole recipe by accidentally putting in a bad egg into it. So I cheat on that sometimes. Sometimes I'll put it right in. But if it's a really important recipe and I don't have ingredients to redo it, don't have time, don't want that extra expense, I will crack the egg into a small bowl first. Cindy's got another question or another mention, and uh, it's similar to what you just mentioned. She's had skim milk last a month after the sell-by date and still tastes absolutely fine. And if she freezes it, it obviously lasts even longer. And that's been our case as well. And
Absolutely.
we do put it in a small mason jar. If it's just about to turn and you kind of realize that, or there's just a little bit left, or it's just past turning, and we'll put it into a mason jar and stick it in the freezer and use it, like you said, for making pancakes and sourdough biscuits or nut breads, or we've even used it in stroganoffs and cream soups. We don't like to waste things in this house when it comes to food. All right.
No, nowadays money's too tight to be throwing that stuff away.
Well, I don't like to waste money even when money's not tight, but especially when it's tight, which is like this. And Wiz has mentioned a good fridge helps too. And
Absolutely.
absolutely. If you can upgrade yours, the energy saving models are much better. Um, Another tip, and we're going to do a show sometime, and I know when we start your shows too, we're going to show more about some of the equipment we use in our own home kitchen that duplicates what you and I used in the professional kitchens. And one of those is a food saver, a vacuum packager to use with food. Can you give us a few tips and explain what that is?
Um, well, over the years, manufacturers have been doing vacuum sealing to um, help save the life of their products for a number of years. And um, there happens to be a product called Food Saver. That's a brand name. Probably shouldn't be plugging it, but uh,
Yes, we can. And it's our
but
favorite, and we bought many of them.
yes, I've used their product for years, and I absolutely love it. They have containers that you can put things in and vacuum seal those. I've used them. I've bought them in most of the restaurant situations that I've been in. Um, they can save thousands of dollars, especially in a restaurant situation. I bet you I've saved in most of the restaurants I've worked at anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 a year just by doing vacuum sealing. Um, and it just what vacuum sealing does is it takes all the air out of it, which helps uh, prolong the spoiling because that's uh, mold and things like that. They all need air to survive. So if you remove that, um, for instance, you can take let's take a steak. You spent $7 a pound for that T-bone steak, and you found you're not going to use it right now. Um, you can put it in a refrigerator and it'll last maybe 5 days tops. You can put it in a plastic bag and put it in your freezer. Um, you'll maybe buy a couple of weeks and then it starts to get crystallized. Um, and then that leads to freezer burn, which takes away obviously the quality of the meat. Um, whereas a vacuum sealed product, we have found that when we were in the restaurant and we had to close down the restaurant, that I had products that I ended up bringing home and ended up using up to 2 years later. And I know that's not a real recommended thing, but that's how much uh, quality you can retain by doing vacuum sealing. And there's a lot of vacuum sealers out there. It's just that Food Saver happens to be one of the best.
I remember a huge bag of shredded cheese was one of the things we brought back that had been vacuum sealed. And except for one little layer at one end, it was fine. We used it for mac and cheese. Uh,
Absolutely.
some of the things we use in our home, we always put our cheese, and we eat a lot of cheese in this house. We like cheese. We put cheese in small sandwich size vacuum sealed containers. They're easy to pop open, and you're not reusing bags all the time. If you use a bag and you cut it open, that bag is now smaller and you can wash it and reuse. But after a while, it's no longer big enough to adequately hold something. So we use a lot of the canisters, and we even use some of our older canisters that have gotten hairline cracks in the bottom. They're still good for storing our um, sugar and flours and cookies. And if you were to turn your computer just slightly, they can probably see them all lined up on our counter there.
There we go, right behind me.
And
Yeah.
those we don't always bother vacuum sealing all the time. We do if we're going to be going away for a while, but some of those actually have little cracked bottoms, and they're just fine and dandy. All right. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left before the top of the hour, and we've given lots of fast action tips. If you've liked the tips so far, click those golden hands on the screen and let us know that you enjoyed that. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You can visit Chef Dennis on Facebook, and I'm going to pop his um, link to his Facebook page. It's called You Can Cuisine. He also has a website. We're just redoing it again, making a major change. And if you have questions you'd like the chef to answer, either in the future show or on his website or on Facebook, I'm going to put a shortened bit.ly link here that will take you directly to the thread with the Ask the Question thread. You can reach me on rockingyourpath.com if you want to make sure of updated notices for future shows. We're now every Friday at 10:30 Eastern, right here on Blab, and you'll be able to get the replays, which I love. Saves me lots of time rendering and producing them afterwards. But you can go to rockingyourpath.com. Any final quick action tips or things we can think about as we roll through the new year?
Yeah, I guess the start of the new year would be a good time to go through and um, clean out your refrigerator, so to speak. And remember, a lot of that stuff it's been hanging out for a while. You got those mixed vegetables that you used 3 days ago. That there's a little cup left of them, and maybe there's a little bit of chicken left, or some turkey left from the holidays, or even some ham. Uh, they make great soups, and that's one of the nice things about cleaning out the refrigerator. We used to at Baker. I would tell my students that it's clean out refrigerator day, so that means we're going to make soups and stocks. So if it's bad, definitely eliminate it and throw it away. But if it's still good, make use of it. You can always freeze it and use it in a stock or a soup later on. But tidy up your refrigerator, wash it down, put some baking soda in it to keep it nice and fresh, and start the new year by having a clean refrigerator slate, so to speak.
Right. And that reminds me of one other tip, which we haven't given yet, and that is taking your peelings from like your
Oh,
ends, your
yep.
carrots, your celery, your skins, tops and bottoms of onions, things like that, bits and pieces of good herbs that you're just not going to use it all. Maybe not the tops of leeks because they can be bitter, and putting them in a bag and putting them in the freezer and using them to help make your homemade stocks and soups. Now, we do a lot of composting here, so most of ours goes right into our compost. But bigger pieces we do put in our freezer. So when you go to make homemade soups and stocks, like we do a lot, we love our homemade stocks. It's there, costs you no extra money, and you get great flavor, and you get that little bit of nutritional value that's still in those. Make sure they're, the dirt's washed off of them. One more question to answer. What about canned goods and the sell by date rules for canned goods?
Well, I mentioned a little earlier. Um, Canned goods, again, sell by dates. The manufacturer is, by law nowadays, they have to put things like sell by dates on them, for whatever reasons the government made them do that. But as long as a canned product is not damaged in some way, shape, or form, like dented cans, um, definitely, if it's got a crack in it and it's open, don't even think about opening it. You just immediately get rid of it. Take it back to the store if you want. And that's another money saving tip. Just don't necessarily have to throw all those things away. You can take them back to the store and say, hey, this was damaged. But canned products, they're good for at least 6 months to a year after the quote unquote sell by date, with no problems whatsoever. Seriously speaking.
Mentioning taking things back to the store, why don't you share briefly what we did with a package of frozen fish recently and how grateful our local store owner was that you brought something to his attention?
Yeah, we had, and again, I'm not a big person to buy breaded fish or anything, but we were in the mood for it, and I brought it home, and we opened it up, and the package had been frozen and thawed and then refrozen. And you'll find that sometimes in stores. And again, either don't buy the product if you can see it up front, or return it back to the store that you bought it from, and they will either refund your money or give you another product. And the way you can tell if a product has been frozen, thawed, and refrozen is normally it's hard as a rock. Like let's take vegetables for instance. Peas. Let's use peas because peas are nice and loose normally. If you go into the store and you find that the bag of peas you have in your hand is a block of solid peas, then that's a pretty good indication that product has been thawed and then refrozen, and you really don't want that product. But I brought it back to the store because it had been refrozen, and the owner of the store was quite gracious and said, he really apologized that ever happened. Went back and he was gladly refunded the money. All I did was exchange the product for another another container of fish because that's really what we wanted to eat. Um, and don't be afraid to do those types of things.
Be polite about it, but do
Oh
it.
yes, I mean don't go in and ranting and raving and this stuff is da 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 da. It's like be calm and collected and as my mother always used to say, you can get is it more honey or something about sugar versus vinegar or something.
Also,
Hey mom, help me out with that one.
go in having an idea what you'd like rectified, but maybe not state it right off. Be open to what they suggest. We ended up being offered much more than we expected. We expected to just exchange a product that had gone bad with a fresher product of the same thing, and we got more than that. We got that plus a coupon for another one, I believe.
Yes.
And the whiz attract more flies with honey than vinegar.
Thank you very much. Yes.
The whiz.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Well, this is Kat Sturtz from rockingyourpath.com with my co-host guest today, Chef Dennis D. Sturtz from You Can Cuisine. We shared lots of tips today on saving time, money, and resources in your kitchen. Next time, we'll be here on Friday, 10:30 Eastern Time. And until then, remember to keep rocking your unique path to success. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.